What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to the returning viewers, and if you're brand new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So today I want to talk to you guys about how to create an absolutely awesome micro kill plot on your property. So I have one on my property. It has seen 4 seasons so far, and we have harvested $7 off of that micro kill plot or the immediately surrounding area in just 4 seasons so far. These things are super easy to put in because they're small and they have huge benefits, especially to attracting your buck herd over your doe herd. So, excellent way to get some bucks in front of you this season. Let's get into it. So the first thing we need to talk about is the site selection. So get out on your land, figure out where a good place to put this in would be. You're looking for an area that already has a lot of existing cover. So you don't necessarily want to put these like smack dab in the middle of a bedding area, but if there is maybe like a thick area that leads into a bedding area, this is an excellent place to put one. If there is like a thick travel corridor through your property, a good place to put one of these micro kill plots would be somewhere in the middle of that thick area to really kind of just widen out that trail and make this a destination for those bucks while they're cruising. So what you want to do is like make sure wherever this is on your property, it's not like in the back corner that you're busting through your entire property, scaring everything off your property just to get to this. You do want to keep in mind how you are going to get in and out of this area when you hunt it as well. So I might pick maybe not the best location if that's in the back part of the property, but maybe the number 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, if I can get in and out of it easier. So you definitely want to prioritize that. Make sure you can get in and out of this undetected, or it's going to completely defeat the purpose of putting this on your property. So that first thing you're looking for, like I said, is cover. You want this to be in a thicker area of your woods. I picked a spot in my woods that has a lot of topography. If you guys watch my other videos, you'll hear me talk about my crater plot. So this area, this micro plot, is actually in the bottom of what is like an old meteor crater. So the meteor hit, it splashed up dirt in like a horseshoe shape around it. That dirt pile's probably 30 feet tall from the bottom of the food plot. And so on 3 sides, I have topography completely covering that food plot, and the deer still feel safe and secure, like they can leave because it's not too steep of a hill. They can run out, but they can't see more than 10-20 yards off the edge of that food plot because they're just looking up into the sky off of the edge of that topography. So they feel very safe and secure that when they're in there, there's nothing looking at them and watching them while they're in there, except for, me up in the stand. But the other side of that, so that fourth side where the meteor came in, was just happened to be a naturally thick area of the woods, which worked out great for me. But also, when I cleared out the food plot with all of the debris and all of the sticks, trees, and etc. that were in there, I piled them up on that fourth side. So just keep in mind that you can put your debris in an area too to kind of cut down on a sight line if there's maybe one area that's a little more open than the others. Great way to make sure that this is a safe, secure little honey hole in the woods for you to put this micro kill plot on. And then, of course, also while you're thinking of this location, make sure that depending on what kind of stand you're going to use, there is applicable trees in the area that are going to allow you to do that. So if you have a ladder stand, if you have a climber, and you need a big tree to put those in, make sure they exist in this area. Now, I just build my own stands. I build them out of 2x4s and plywood. I will spray Flex Seal on the roof, which really keeps them dry inside. I'll link what I use down below so you guys can check that out. I really like using that rubber roof over. I see some guys using that like metal roof, which is great. Those buildings will last forever, but man, is it noisy in them when it's raining. So I love that rubber roof. It really cuts down on the noise inside the stand, especially if you're getting a little bit of precipitation. So again, I'll link that down below. You guys can go check that out. So now that we got site selection out of the way, we need to work on site prep. So like I said already, the first thing you're going to want to do is get in there and clear out any trees, any debris of where the plot itself is going to go. Mine is only about a 1/16 of an acre, so this didn't take all that long to get cleared out. Like I said, any debris we had in there, I just piled up where I was trying to cut down on a sight line to really add to the attractiveness and the safety and security of this area of the woods to the deer herd. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind while you have the chainsaw in your hand is to look to the south if you're in the northern hemisphere and cut down any of those big trees that are up there, because you're going to need to get as much sunlight down into this food plot as possible. And that's going to be a little more challenging on these small micro plots because, like I said, if they're only a 16th of an acre in the woods, your canopy is probably completely just dwarfing this food plot. So you are going to need to head to the south off this food plot and get some of those big trees out of there as well to allow some sunlight down into this plot. And then once you got that sunlight right, you're going to want to get that soil right. So you're going to want to get in there with at least a steel rake and just sort of rough up that dirt, get it so you're agitating everything. So there has been years and years of natural decay, be it leaves that are coming off the trees and landing in there. If you're putting this in like a marshy area, you're going after that big swamp buck, you're going to have all of those other grasses and stuff in there. Get those cut down, but you're going to want to break up that very top layer of that soil to really allow the seeds that you're going to plant in there to grab some soil contact and really germinate and get a good growth out of them. So what you're also doing here is essentially composting that top layer. So all of that native vegetation has fallen on the surface over the years, and there's going to be layers and layers that have been built down over time. We're just going to kind of mix that up, just like if you have a compost pile at home, how you would want to turn it over to get all of the nice soil touching the stuff that hasn't been decayed and composted yet, and just kind of mix it all up to get that very top layer of compost going for you to really have good soil to grow in. Now, on top of that, you're also going to want to get a soil test. So in a lot of situations, like if you're in the big woods and there's a lot of high canopy trees, all that leaf litter came down over the years. Those leaves are a lot of carbon, so you're going to be lacking nitrogen in your soil, because especially if those trees were choking out the sunlight from any of that like native grass and stuff from growing underneath, because that grass would be nitrogen. You need nitrogen and carbon to make good compost. So you're going to want to add in some nitrogen. You're going to want to either, if you want to do this completely naturally, you can put in some like leafy green material to mix in with the carbon of those leaves to get like a good composted soil, get like a really good healthy soil. But otherwise you can fertilize as well. And if you get that soil sample, they're going to tell you exactly how much of each thing you need to put in there. The other thing you're going to want to keep in mind is your pH. So if you have ferns growing in your woods, your pH is going to be very low. That soil is going to be very acidic. You're going to need to get that pH up, and you can very easily and cheaply do that with lime. So you're going to want to get lime in there to get that pH right as well. But that soil test is going to tell you exactly how much you need to put in there. And because this is only a 16th of an acre food plot, it should be relatively easy to get these things in there. You're not having to bring in thousands of pounds of lime unless your soil is really that bad. But just a four-wheeler or just good old sweat and breaking your back to get it in there is going to be enough to hopefully get this soil right. So if you have good sunlight and good soil, you're going to have to pray for rain, but you're going to have a really good, successful food plot in there. Now, and if you are in that swamp area, again, if you're trying to plant like peat moss is very high in carbon and very low in pH. So you're going to have the same issues I talked about of trying to put it in the big woods. So you're going to have to get that nitrogen level up and get that pH up. Again, a soil sample will tell you exactly how much you're going to need for each of those things. Now, once you have the food plot area set up and it's all set to go, the other thing I like to do is really spruce up that food plot. And I do that by putting man-made deer trails that lead off into the woods off of this kill plot. So I really like to have absolute control of where those deer are coming on and leaving this food plot. And it's easy enough to do. Like if you were dropping those big trees like I was talking about earlier to get some sunlight down, once they're on the ground, cut a path through the middle of one of them. You will be surprised they will walk exactly in that spot through the woods. And so I really like to make sure the deer are coming on and leaving the food plot exactly where I want them to, so that I have a good shot on them. Now, what I also recommend doing is maybe 10 yards plus off the edge of the food plot, put in a mock scrape, and depending on where your stand location is, hopefully if you're even with a bow, you'll have a shot on that mock scrape and onto the food plot over here. Excellent place to really make sure those cruising bucks are coming in here and leaving there, and vice versa, depending on if it's morning, afternoon, how they travel in your area. But really making sure you're putting them right in front of you and you have a shot on them and they're not just like randomly moving through the area. Very easy way to really set up how they move through your area. So my micro food plot, for example, has a bigger food plot a ways off to the right from where I'm sitting, there is a man-made deer trail comes in with a mock scrape on it. That's shot opportunity number one if they're coming off of that big food plot. It then leads to this micro food plot, micro kill plot. That is going to be my second shot opportunity. And then there's another man-made deer trail that leads off to where their bedding area is. So I am taking these deer in or coming in this way, and they're going to hit up at least 2 spots, probably more, where I'm going to have a decent shot at them, where they're going to stop. I'm not going to be taking a moving shot. I'm not going to have to do the whistle or the grunt or the whatever. They will just naturally stop on their own. I'll have a nice broadside shot on them because I set up these man-made deer trails coming in and off of this attraction where it benefits me most. So now that we handled site prep, let's get into plant selection. So because this is a small food plot, the biggest challenge you're going to have is over browsing. If this is your only food plot on your property, and I highly recommend if you've never done a food plot before, by all means start with a micro food plot like this, but you are going to have over browsing pressure if there aren't other big food sources in your area. So like me on my northwestern Wisconsin property, I have no egg fields anywhere in sight of that property. So I had to put in other big food plots to really take care of my does and fawns. They'll go browse out on those big food plots, but these micro food plots really attract those bucks. Like I said, 7 bucks in the last 4 seasons. That is a lot of success on a very small part of the woods up there. So by doing this, we are creating an area where we can keep our bucks in cover in a safe feeding area for them. And we're putting our does and fawns out there where the family can spread out. There can maybe be 2 doe family groups out there that aren't putting too much pressure on each other. Well, these bucks can stay away from the noise of the women and children over here on this small food plot. And if he wants to go check out the does because it's the rut, by all means, he can go do that as well. But he'll still most likely hit up this path on his way there. And that's what's going to put him in front of you. But if this is your only food plot on your property, you're going to deal with that over browsing. So what I would highly recommend is, of course, first, make sure that sun and that soil are right, because those are going to grow you a thicker, lusher food plot than anything else you can do. And of course, you're going to have to pray for rain. You can't really control that though. Now, the second thing is plant selection. We aren't going to be putting in the big crops like the beans and the peas out here, because the deer will just come through and nip them off and kill them when they're just germinating, just popping out of the ground. So what I like to do is plant something that's going to keep growing even if they browse on it. Now, in northwestern Wisconsin, I'm using winter rye. It grows into a much colder time of the year. But if you're further down south, you can plant something like clover or chicory in these things as well, because it'll continue to grow and you guys have a much longer growing season. But these things will really be attractive in these little micro plots if everything's handled correctly. And again, if that soil's handled correctly, that also means these are going to taste better to the deer too, so they're even more attractive to them. So just make sure that you're planting something that can be cut and comes again, so that when the deer do bite it, it does continue to grow and doesn't just kill it off in these micro plots. Because if you try to plant those big crops, those big food plot mixes or whatever, they're just not going to work in these small food plots, because they're going to just get browsed down to nothing, and you're going to be left with a dirt patch heading into the season that the deer aren't even relating to anymore. So next we have to talk about your stand setup. So I highly recommend that if you're going to put an attraction in of any kind, but especially one like this that should be super attractive to those bucks, that you have the option of 2 stand locations. And that is so that you can hunt it in any wind direction. If you have one over here and one over here and the attraction is in the middle, that allows you to hunt every single wind direction. Now, also keep in mind your thermals. When there are thermals coming in, that is in the morning, they will typically be rising up as the day warms up. And in the evening, they will be coming down as the day cools off. You're going to want to watch out for that too. So this specific micro plot that I have the benefit of, like I said, I have that meteor crater that goes around on 3 sides of it. I have my stand location set up on the highest point to the east of the food attraction. So the predominant winds come from the west. They dump off completely behind me, away from that food source. But also because I'm up high in the morning, it doesn't matter which way the wind direction is blowing, because the thermals are being carried up and out. So in fact, 2 of those 7 bucks that were shot in the last 4 years off of this micro plot, 2 of them were actually coming in directly downwind from me. My scent was blowing straight at them, but because of the thermals, it was being carried up and over them. So just be conscious of those thermals as well as that wind direction. Now, in the afternoon, because your thermals are coming down and I'm up high, if for whatever reason I had a due east wind, it would be dropping my thermals right off the edge and filling in that crater with my scent. Now, if I have a slightly southeast wind or a slightly northeast wind, because of the edges of that crater, it's still going to push my scent and it's going to carry the back side of that topography away from that food source. Now, I do have to be conscious of where the deer might be coming in or going out, or if I do have an easterly wind, sit in a stand on the other side of that food source altogether. But just keep in mind that topography is very good at dumping that afternoon scent down and into a valley or into a little hole, into a little pocket behind you if you are in an area that has topography. So just keep in mind wind direction and thermals when you're picking these stand locations and setting these stands up. Now, once you've decided where these stands are going to go, the next thing you want to do is hide them. You really want to make sure that you are being a predator in the woods. And since you're going through all this effort to put in this food source, why not take a little bit more time and also mold the part of the terrain around where your stand locations are and where your ingress and egress is to them. So we always typically will throw in some pine trees if they're just saplings, or we can transplant some bigger ones. We will put those at the base of the stand so that we can get to it and get up in it without projecting ourselves off into the woods of anything that might have a sight line onto us. This really helps us to not scare off the deer herd that might be in the vicinity when we're getting in or out of our stand locations. The other thing is, like I said, your ingress and egress, and I say that as 2 different things because you may have a situation where you come into your stand on one path and you leave on another. And the reason for this is just the time of the day that you're hunting. So if you're going out for an afternoon sit and you're coming in the middle of the day, you can walk through a food plot, through a food source, because the deer shouldn't be there. They'll be in their bedding area at that time of the day. And then you sit until dark. Well, now you don't want to exit through that food source because the deer were either just in it or are about to be in it or are still in it. And you don't want to bust them off of that. So you need a different way on out of there. So when you're thinking of how you're getting in and out of these stands, make sure that those paths are hidden as well. I love to use conifers, like I said. I also like to use switchgrass. And the reason for that is switchgrass and conifers are cover, but they are not browse. So they are not attractive to the deer. Now, yeah, if it gets to be really bad weather and they need that thermal protection, they will bed in them or near them, but typically deer are going to be in thick cover that also has browse, which that eliminates your switchgrass and your conifers from that unless they're intermixed with those other things. So if you plant a row of conifers along the trail that gets you in and out of your stand location, you'll be hidden the whole way in and out. And just what I like to do is go down and stand on the attraction. So stand on the food plot, stand on that man-made deer trail that comes in and out of there, those several trails that come in and out of there, and just look at your stand and look at where you come in and out. Can the deer see it if they are in the vicinity of these attractions? And if there's a big, blatantly open area where you can see straight in there, plant a couple trees there, throw some brush down there, even cut some trees down just to create havoc in the area and cut down on those sight lines. Be a predator, mold the terrain for yourself, and you will see success this season, just like I have on the last 4 seasons and with the other guys that have hunted that stand as well. Get that site selected, get that site prepped correctly, get that sun and soil right in there. Make sure you're planting something that will regrow if they buzz it down. Get those stands set up correctly, and you should see success this season. I wish you guys luck this coming season. If you want to support the channel, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. Otherwise, go check out that one, and I'll check you guys on the next one.